Well, that was weird. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Mad LiberTEA Party, where up is down, left is right, and the rules don't matter because we're all mad here. I'm double checking everything to make sure we're all like plugged in the right stuff. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Eh,
It works. Um,
eh.
hey, I'm really glad that you guys came to join us today. We're having one of our interviews. We call them Mad LiberTEA Times, and we haven't done these in a while, and I'm really excited to get back to do them. I'm really happy to have our guest here today. It's Jeremiah Harding. He's everyone's nuisance and nemesis and things gone wild in the dark. Um, my gosh darn it, the cat. Excuse me, a liber
Mm.
kitty needs in. While I'm doing that, you want to introduce yourself, bro? Like, tell them about your. Give yourself a little intro. We'll get into the meat and potatoes of that stuff, but like,
So, I'm a self-identified conspiracy theorist. I'm an anarchist. I'm all about, finding where the connections are, whether those connections are based on some sort of intersectionality of oppression or some sort of based on, business and government relations and shit like that. And I'm all about, trying to find as many of those connection points as possible so that, we can get some unity up in this bitch. Um, because, generally speaking, my modus is to oppose that which would divide us unnecessarily and get us moving in the right direction. I'm extremely angry at the state. I'm fucking hypermetabolic, hyperhormonal, ADHD, PTSD, bipolar, LMNOP, fucking whatever thing. And yeah,
mm-hmm.
I refuse the meds and I hate the feds.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm actually really glad to have you on here. Like, um, we've kind of like, I've like seen you in passing and in circles for like years. Um, and like, it wasn't until like later on that we actually started to kind of talk to each other a little bit on occasion, just on like social media back and forth every once in a while and comments and stuff. But like, I was watching some of your stuff and like, I during today when you're explaining stuff, I'm gonna have to like step in and be like, and this is where it happened because like there was a spot where your like springboard was kind of springboarding me, like
Mm.
you were shifting gears and your gear shift. Well, it didn't cause it, but it helped me to be able to like confidently stride that way because I could see other people having that struggle, and I think that like the stuff that you have done just like digitally has been like a great. You've brought a bunch of people around. You've created places for people to speak. And like obviously the liberty stuff like gets me super excited, and you're more spicy than some of the other liberty people, so I like that too. Always have something to like talk about, and you're always inviting us on your show. You're always doing stuff like that. um, but I'm gonna like kick off this thing with like the question that I like to ask the most, which is what happened? Like, how did you get here? Like, what brought you along your path to anarchy? Because that seems like a real weird, curvy road for you.
So I started out as a kid in fucking the Southern California desert, and like that's not a good environment for me because of all the stuff I just listed, to say the least. Um,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, it was like a very military town with some hippies in it, and my family was pretty much split down the middle in terms of conservative and less conservative because we're liberals are just conservatives anyway. So um, the general vibe was I was trying to impress my father with some of my beliefs. I was very interested in doing well in the church for a significant period of my childhood, like most of it, probably up until 16. Um, and then I just started to fall off of a lot of that because there was a point in my early development where I was very, very try hard with the conservative bullshit, to the point where I was basically a fascist saying I wanted to genocide Middle Easterners. I hated
Jeez.
LGBT people, um, and I wanted to install automated turrets on the border to keep out the criminals who are bringing in the drugs. Like I was way ahead of my time on that talking point. Um,
Wow, we would have not gotten along. I'm really glad we didn't meet back then, because, like, man, that would have seriously tainted us coming around each other
yep.
later. Except, I don't know, I've met people who have really come out of that shit, and when people come out of that stuff, a lot of times they come out fucking swinging.
Yeah, it's like a lot of my stuff since then. Like when I was 16, I really started to ask some questions because I was like, you know, somebody I think somebody started to like pick away at some of it because like look, I don't hate Christians. I really don't. If you're a Christian that's actually following Christ, excellent. You know, there's some examples in my circles. But I started to like get like some thoughts. Not only because Silent Hill 4 made me a solipsist, but like also because generally speaking, somebody said, "Well, you're already atheist to all these other religions because you say you need a standard of evidence for all these other religions. Why don't you apply that same standard of evidence to this one?" And I sort of started to be like, "Wait, you know, you're right. I mean, I'm demanding a standard of evidence that's like so much higher for all these other things than my current understanding of religion." And like accepting that it's just a faith thing, it's just like, well, there comes a point when you might have a few qualms with certain
Mm-hmm.
aspects of that faith, especially when it seems to not make any sense, and especially when like you're not even allowed to question it. And so I was like, I was asking people in
Yeah.
the church questions, and like, I remember there was this one time that like, and this is connected too. There's this one time where I was like, I asked if I could just, you know, have a conversation with somebody in leadership because there were some things in the Bible that were concerning to me. In
Yeah.
terms of like not seeming to overlap, in terms of seeming to have some contradictions. And the reaction I got was not, you know, a reaction of, "Well, this is excellent research you did. I'll look into it," or
Yeah.
something like that. It was basically, "Stop asking questions and have more faith." And I'm like, "Wow, that certainly is a thing you could say to me." And so
Jeez.
that started to pick away at it. It was like, well, I mean, I'm sort of just attached to this church because I wanted to, you know, please my father. And let's just say that there was some rockiness because of, you know, some abuse and some other shit that happened that basically meant that I spent a significant amount of time just not talking to him. Um,
Yeah.
and like it started to pick away. It all started to pick away at my general vibes with conservative Christianity. And because of that, because like my conservative Christianity started to like be picked away at, I was like, well, maybe I don't support Republicans. Can I really actually support them? And like also like I
Yeah.
visited this Buddhist temple in Southern California, and that opened my mind because I was like, this is actually pretty nice in terms of like alternate religious structures. And so I started to
Right.
peel my mind away from the authoritarian theocratic stuff. And there was a time in my life where I was, because of that, openly hostile to Christians, but that's ended now, and I'm on board with complete unity. But the general vibe is, I started to move away from that stuff around 16, and around like the end of my 17th, when I was about to be 18, I was basically not very happy with Democrats or Republicans, and I had had enough conversations with enough people to realize that a lot of the stuff that I was sort of believing was bullshit. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said to my mom, like, I don't know what I'm going to register as, you know, because I don't feel Republican or Democrat. She's like, are have you heard about the libertarians? And I was like, no, what
What's
is
that?
that? Yeah. And so she sent me on this rabbit hole, which she now firmly denies because she doesn't like how deep I went down it. But yeah, but, but basically, like, I started to look into libertarianism, and I was like, yeah, this sounds like me, because there was that surface level, like, are you a libertarian kind of bullshit propaganda. Like, I hate that
Mm-hmm.
now at this point,
Yeah.
because for years I was just like, yeah, I'm a libertarian. I I want limited government, and fucking we're socially like liberal and economically conservative, whatever that means. Um,
Yeah.
and so let's just say I had an embarrassingly long stint in those circles where I was like learning more and more and trying to like understand these things, and researching Austrian economics led me down the like Misesian Ron Paul stuff. And like that sort of opened me up to like more radical modes of thinking, because when Ron Paul got the shaft at the RNC, um, and all of my efforts were basically scuttled because they wouldn't even let him debate these people, I was like, oh, the system needs to be
Uh-huh.
abolished.
This is messed up, yeah.
Yeah, and like, so it was sort of like that. It was like, you know, I thought maybe there was a way to like, if we can just get Ron Paul to the debates, then we can convert more people and we'll have a revolution, even though I hate that word now. Um, and like fucking all this shit, it's just it was exhausting. It took a lot out of me in terms of like what I was doing. I was like spreading campaign materials. I had a Ron Paul 2012 sticker on my car, which I know now no longer have because I fucking didn't get enough lube and oils, but that's a different story. Um, the general vibe is that I was really on board and I was trying to like, but like also I was affiliated in the same way. I had another sticker on my car for copblock.org, and the sticker for copblock.org was
What
because
is
I
that?
oh, cop block. So that
Oh.
was yeah, yeah. So copblock.org, for those of you who don't know, is an organization of people who just film the cops. And because you're filming the
Yeah.
cops, they didn't like do as much brutality or corruption or whatever. Or sometimes they would do the brutality and corruption to the person filming, and it would become a whole nother
Ins-
issue. Go.
yeah, I was like, instead, yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah, so that started to really push my buttons, because I was like, wow, these cops are acting like, standing army on our soil, and
Mm-hmm.
this seems unconstitutional, gosh darn it. Um and that mattered to me at the time. um Now it's just like, I fucking don't care if it's constitutional or not, as long as it's like giving people freedom. Um and
Yeah.
the Constitution ain't protecting shit, really. So, but like back then, I hadn't quite gone that far, and I was still like, well, if I just carry my pocket Constitution and know my rights, and if I have like, if I ask them all the right questions, if I say the right magic words, then maybe I'll get out of this ticket. Maybe I'll blah 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 blah, and like,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff where I was like basically being a Libby kind of libertarian. Um, like, and a lot of this stuff was like, encouraged in these libertarian circles, but then they would show this footage of these cops just not giving a fuck about like whether or not these people were quoting the right shit,
Yeah.
not giving a
Yeah.
fuck about their rights. And so it started to make me hate cops for some reason. And that
Gee,
combined
imagine that.
yeah, that combined with the fucking, like, here's a component of it, and I will stand by part of it, and this is gonna maybe upset some people in the audience, but
Yeah,
I was
whatever.
a supporter of Gamergate. Um, at the time, the reason I was not because of all the stuff that came on later, where they were like, fucking trying to make it an
Mm-hmm.
anti-leftist movement, but I wanted accountability. I wanted ethics in games journalism, and I was like, really plugged into the fact that all these mainstream linked publications were colluding in secret, and like
Mm-hmm.
trying to puppet the narrative. But like that wasn't good enough for me. Like, because eventually I realized that a lot of these people didn't actually care about ethics in journalism, and that they just wanted to grift.
Yeah.
And I was sort of caught up in the anti-SJW stuff as well, because, like, some of those people were annoying, some of those people were abjectly evil, or like trying to grift for the purposes of statism. So it made sense to some extent. But I also started to realize, hey, some of these people are just fucking fascists. Some of these people are just
Yeah.
Nazis. And some of these people involved in these spaces that are like anti SJW, they're just in this so that they can, fight their bullshit culture wars, and they don't actually give a shit about freedom. They don't give a shit
No.
about
Yeah.
ethics in journalism, because they'll be the same kind of journalists, but in the other degree. And so I was like, did I support some grifters? And
Yeah.
fast forward, by the way, to much later, some of those people who were in my circles are now abjectly just supporting alt-right and Nazi figureheads. Some of those people that I was in active chats with are now fully on board with anti-Jew, anti-trans, anti-whatever sentiment, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just over here like, haha. I got out before I fucking got fully into that shit. But either way, the point is that I was in those circles. I was in the cop block circles. I was also in circles about Assange and WikiLeaks and Manning and all these people who were affiliated with the anti-war movement. Um, and so, like, I was affiliated with all this stuff, just adding people on social media at semi-random. I had a Tumblr blog before somebody, like, and I still technically do, but it's been so long since I posted on it. Um, like, so you take all those things on the existing blog with a
Mm-hmm.
grain of salt, I guess. But like, the general vibe is I was on like Tumblr for years, and some of the people on Tumblr actually did teach me a thing or two about, maybe like you should look into X, Y, and Z philosopher, X, Y, and Z thinker. And like some of those people that I was like really at odds with, I'm probably much closer to now. Either way, the point is that like um when I was involved in like a lot of this stuff, um like I was slowly building up a network of people, some of whom were more radical than others. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to recognize these trends and these patterns. And like one of the things that really started to hit for me was them talking about like dropping people out of helicopters and other sorts of
Yeah.
like weird, like Austin Peterson in these circles being like, the non-aggression principle is an ANCAP suicide pact. And also like at the same
Oof.
time
Yeah.
endorsing things like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and telling me that like it was ethical what they did because it ended the war quickly, and a bunch of shit like this that just like those things from him. Or like the general vibe that I got from Liberty Hangout, and like
Oh.
like the fact that they were I got into this borders debate with Liberty Hangout. I think it was 2016, so it's like almost a decade ago. Might be further back. I don't fucking care. The point is that
Oh
like it
yeah.
was a
Liberty Hangout was terrible.
yeah.
I was about
And
16, I think. Maybe right about there.
uh, and so like I was like I got into this debate because I was doing work with like on a meme page with like I don't know if anybody remembers them, but Anarchy Ball. Um And that
Mm.
was like, the political compass balls, the little like
Yeah,
Poland
yeah.
ball kind of, yeah,
That
largely just straw
those
man
are
the
still all
people's
over the
argument.
place, man. But that place is so. Oh wow.
Yeah. And so like the general vibe that like I got into arguments on their behalf sometimes. And I was going
Oh.
by hedgehog on Anarchy Ball and putting out memes, and my stuff was relatively consistent in those principles. And one of the principles that I was consistent on is opposing the borders entirely. Not even thinking that we should have like when I became anarchist, not even thinking that we should have like borders, but like closed and controlled, or borders and open borders, but like no borders at all. and I got into fucking arguments with them over that. Um, and like one of those things manifested in a debate that included Justin Moldo, Jared Howe, and Eric July. Um,
Oh, wild. Wow.
yeah. And so Eric was a moderator, and it was only supposed to be with one person from Liberty Hangout, which would have been much more constructive. But what it turned into was like two people from Liberty Hangout against me. And then eventually, like partway through the debate, this is what my audience noticed before I really did, which was it basically turned on all turned into all three of them against me,
Ugh.
because I kept on making my points and they kept on being wildly misconstrued, or not taken seriously by the moderation. And like I was talked over a lot. There was a lot of instances where, and so like that sort of thing started to really pique my interest. Like, well, these people are very connected, and these people are part of this ecosystem, and they're basically endorsing the same sorts of like weirdly fashy talking points, endorsing this dictator Augusto Pinochet and a bunch of other shit. So I like started to really analyze fascist like tendencies in these circles. Um, and one of the things,
That'll do it.
yeah, and one of the things was like I started out um as an anarchist because I basically decided, look, I'm going to watch a couple hours of police brutality and war footage, and if I can't still support the system afterwards, I have to be an anarchist. I can
Mm-hmm.
no longer be this minarchist. And for years, I had been doing things like tabling with Young Americans for Liberty and, trying to get people on board with the right libertarian message and a bunch of other shit. And it's just like it got to the point where, like, I was tired of it. I was like, this isn't helping. Nobody is like actually authentically interested now, and like on my campus in my shit ass small town any more than they already weren't. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, there was a whole series of things where I just realized this isn't working. This isn't gonna work. The system doesn't give a shit. I'm doing all this for
Right.
nothing. I'm wasting my time. And so at that point where I snapped over, I became one of those voluntarists who, oh, I don't like
Yeah.
commies or Nazis, treating all communists like the same and claiming that they're on the same level as Nazis inherently, ignoring the history of libertarianism. But then I started to look into the history of libertarianism when I recognized the Fash pipeline, and I was like, oh, okay, libertarianism includes leftists, and in fact was originally
Mm-hmm.
leftist. And this brought me
Yeah.
on this journey to be like, you know what? Why do I have a problem with like anarcho-communists? Why do I have a problem with these people that I've been tribalizing against uh, through Anarchy Ball and all this other shit? And I was like, I think maybe I should like look into this shit and try to work with these people where I can. And this was like, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. It was something like that. It was really around the time of that Liberty Hangout shit where I started to question some stuff. And I was like, you know, there's a lot more here. Also, Eric July kept on giving me the runaround with that debate, and like he was supposed to give me a file copy so that I could put it on my channel too. That never ended
Mm-hmm.
up happening. And so I had to find a way to download it from Facebook before the Facebook downloader thing was really common.
Oh, jeez.
Um,
Fun.
yeah, and this was like after a while of asking and just getting like the fucking the cold shoulder on that. And so like it was realizing how fake a lot of this shit was. How a lot of these people, especially like realizing how few people in these circles actually read what they
Mm-hmm.
fucking said they did. Like, oh, I'm a Hoppian. Well, okay, so
Okay.
what about
Yeah.
Democracy the God That Failed have you read? What clicked with you? Uh um and so it's like a bunch of shit like that. It's like little things that sort of started to pepper my landscape with maybe there are people in all these camps that are full of shit, and maybe like I don't want to be one of them. So yeah, it's been a rocky journey. It's been sort of getting more and more like in that direction. uh, for a variety of reasons in a variety of ways. And basically, yeah, like the libertarian journey was directly like just trying to find actual truth and getting repeatedly stymied on so many fucking fronts, and realizing that a significant portion of that stymieing was because libertarian right wing bullshit was oftentimes the like result of jacking the culture and not actually being on board with libertarianism. I came up with this phrase.
Mm-hmm.
If you hate the left more than you love liberty, then you're not a libertarian. Um, and so many of these people did. Like they were there to like, oh, I hate them social justice commies, them leftists, them liberals, and they would support like outright statism before they would support like, a libertarian leftist. Like that's the reason I'm still followed by Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, even though fucking actively gone against those people for a significant period of time. It's all this stuff. It's all this stuff that like, I was in this ecosystem. I saw it from the inside. And like now that I've come out on the other side, I'm just like, a lot of that is fascism. And like there was this
Yeah.
guy when I was tabling who he very specifically he just walked by my table, started to point at all the literature on the table, and he pointed at fascism, fascism. Oh, look, that's also fascism. And he walked away,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, like, and I sort of followed him for a bit, and I was like, "Yo, I mean, are you gonna tell us why it's fascism?
Why?
Are you gonna tell us why what we're doing?" And like, look, I still think that was the wrong approach. I think that was a
Yeah.
cunt approach, but I can see now why he was saying that, because a lot of this stuff is just directly connected to fascism. And when you look down
Yeah.
at the heritage and the lineage of a lot of these things, like I was actively handing out Heritage Foundation literature when I was in college before I dropped
Mm-hmm.
out because I fucking couldn't stand the shit. Like I was actively handing out like Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, Americans for Prosperity or whatever literature, and not realizing that I was pipelining like Koch brothers propaganda that was actively helping the right wing authoritarian state in the
Yeah.
name of libertarianism. And so it just it was a long journey to realizing that a lot of the stuff that I was supporting previously, I was full of shit in doing so, and actively
Mm-hmm.
supporting one or more varieties of fascism. And now I do a lot of work just to reverse all of that. So basically, that's just this circuitous way of saying when you said that certain people come out swinging because they came out of all of that. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've been slowly realizing that the fight was misplaced, and that really like the unity needs to happen across the anti-authoritarian spectrum. And if we don't
Yeah.
get that unity, we'll just keep fighting each other, especially in libertarian circles where infighting is so fucking common, and not actually get anything done, not fight the state, not actually fucking, push back in any meaningful way. We'll be fucked because we've been spending so much time fighting each other, so little time doing anything that actually meaningfully hits back against the state, and so little time like actually meaningfully like improving ourselves and our own ranks, that we'll have no time and energy to do any of that, and the state will win. The state's going to improve. The state's going to massively expand its hegemony, and it's the single biggest empire in history. And like I'm supposed to just be like, yeah, you know what? As long as we get rid of them commies, then we'll be fine. Nah, I
Yeah.
just somehow
Jeez.
don't fucking think so. Anyway, that's probably a lot to respond to,
That
but
is so relatable, though. I mean, like, a lot of this is so relatable. Like, you're trying to pick through the libertarians and the ANCAPs and finding that a bunch of them were, like, just kind of performative and having to dig around in it. And, like, it felt like a whirlwind for me. Like, when I encountered that side of anarchy and libertarianism for the first real time, like, I was very idealistic, but I was also extremely vulnerable because of things that had happened that drove me in that direction. Because I came from the left. Um, and like trying to just find a place where there were cool people, struggling to try and find a space that was like, safe in that side of things. It was a lot easier back then. But like, as you're talking and stuff, I recognize like those shifts in the culture because I was there. Like I was watching this stuff and slowly becoming concerned, just like you. Like, I got close to that stuff, but then I was like, wait a minute, that's fucking, oh my god. Um, and I came out of that. Even I didn't dip as far in as some people did. I just kind of like slid towards the edge of the table and then got pulled the fuck back up and started punching and stuff. But like, I can really, like I can really relate to that stuff. It's crazy how it has happened. And I remember at one point when I was losing ANCAPs to the culture war and fascism, like that was actually, I think, the first time I really tried to reach out to you like hard, because I saw you basically metaphorically in the middle of a pack of fucking hyenas, just kind of like trying to fucking deal with them yourself. And I didn't like that. It was freaking not right. These people were falling off the table and you were trying to stay consistent, and I had a lot of respect for that. I still do. It's not easy. Like, it gets hard. It gets really hard. And, like, one of the things, like, that is really great about going into that and then coming out of that is that, like, I've seen you do a lot of work trying to, like, call the libertarians as hard as you can on basically everything they're doing, because everything they're doing now is kind of dicked. But, like, it's, man, it's kind of depressing to watch. I've ended up like seeing so many people fall off, just like you said, and some of those people we have overlap with. Um I just, oh, fuck. It's so sad. I hate that part. But like, unity and stuff, so you got like drawn towards unity and everything from that. Where did so like, did you just go at it by yourself for a little while, or did you find people? It's harder these days to find unity groups that aren't actually just like a cesspit of like screaming and stuff like that.
So originally, the first like real strong thought of unity came when I saw this symbol, um, and it was like a wheel of anarchy with arrows pointing in all
Oh,
direction. Yeah,
I
and
think I
like it
know
has
the one.
yeah, and it has like the anarchist A in the middle and all these other symbols on the outside of it, all the rainbow, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so what are all these symbols? What do all these things mean? And so I started to look into those, and I started to be like, these are some flavors. I can get behind this. Um, and so like a lot of this sort of thing started that way, and then it also like some of the stuff that did break me out of like my yellow phase, proverbially speaking, because like I don't have a problem with actual anarchists who like think that they can make an anarchist version of capitalism, because like first off, I just don't think that they're right about it being capitalism. I think it's markets.
Yeah,
um,
me
and
too.
then and then secondly, I think that there's a significant overlap between them and these others, that if they actually analyze that, it would be a lot easier, a lot faster in impression. Um, so, but like one of the things that like really started to break me out was realizing some of this hypocrisy. Like, so many of these libertarians are like, hashtag wood chipper go burr, right? There
Mm-hmm.
was this thing that I was trying to run called timetofree.us. It's now completely defunct. You cannot find it. Um, which is unfortunate because it could have been a cool project. But now you can find something relatively similar called Anarch Unity. That's still going. And people who want to sign up, anarchists of any stripe, you're welcome to sign up if you want to make us some original content. But basically, the vibe of time to free.us was I wanted to say that it's time to free us, and that website was available. So like I went with that,
That's kind of
even though
cool.
it's kind but it's also kind of janky. It's a little cringe. It's got that cringe flavor to it. Uh
Okay, it's
yeah,
still
yeah,
cute.
yeah. It was like, so I was trying to get that off the ground, and there was this person who came on board, and had a YouTube channel, and like was throwing some stuff in there for youth advocacy. And like this person called Bunny Riley. Yeah, you know them now. Yeah.
Oh.
Before any of that was known, I knew what their voice sounded like. And basically, this came up later, and I started to look into these circles, um, and like, because I knew what this voice sounded like, and I was also in some anti-pedo circles for a variety of
Mhm.
other reasons, because that issue came up, and because I saw people basically being suspended and investigated for going against pedophilia, and I was like, well, that's fucked up. So I got
Yeah.
involved in a bunch of anti-pedophile stuff, and like, started to look into some of these sex rings and like Epstein and shit. And like a lot of these things really upset me. Like, oh, the people in power, they're
Understandably.
yeah. And so like generally speaking, um I went against a lot of this stuff, and I was following this person named Cass, and he was doing a stream, and this person was on that stream. I heard the voice. I was
Oh
like,
no.
I know that voice. And so I was like, I'm going to look into this. And there was some overlaps, let's just say, with some circles that I had already been looking into. Most notably, this sort of weird online kingpin of this stuff called Giovanni Leaftus Morgan. Um, and this person was affiliated with a bunch of online pedo rings that were actively encouraging and disseminating CP. Um,
Yeah.
and so basically, I knew this person already, and this Riley, who sounded exactly like this other Riley, and who also said that they were anarchists. Um, on Gab, they were identifying right alongside this movement of like Giovanni Leiftus
Oof.
Morgan and a bunch of other people, Hypersonic, a bunch of other people that were like involved in this direct advocacy for pedophilia, and direct advocacy for grooming. And let's just say, when I started to point this out, I had a whole bunch of people who told me that I was doing guilt by association because I was tagging people on Twitter saying, "Hey, yo, you follow this person. This is fucked up. Look at what they're saying and doing and advocating." There were a bunch of other people who said that there was no way I could prove that this was the same person, even though it's the same persona, the same fucking
Mm.
like the same voice, the same mentality, the same cadences. And then eventually it came around to being like, well, that is them, but they're just joking, and a bunch of other stuff. And needless to say, there was some friction in certain anarchist circles. And the primary friction circle was with one of the circles who didn't like me for another reason. This was more recently. And those circles were circles of Dapperton and Back Alley
Yo.
Philosophy, and a bunch of these places that were more welcoming to fascists and bigots than they should be, and that already bothered me. But like, they
Way
were also,
more.
yeah, but they were also welcoming to this pedophile, and that because of that, and because of consistently defending this person, even after like I came out with all this stuff, because they didn't like me, because I was too commie and woke and SJ and left and blah 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 blah. And also
Yeah,
because
they're the reason why I ended up actually like starting to follow you much more closely because they were talking shit and I went and looked at the stuff they were linking and I was like, wait a minute, this is like actually reasonable. What's going on here?
yeah,
And like that was actually when that happened, I think.
yeah, and so like basically I started to be like, yo, y'all are all about wood chipper go burr when you can say that the pedos are on the left and it's these liberals, and it's, as long as we get power, we'll fucking. But then you're gonna ignore the pedophilia in the Pinochet regime. You're gonna ignore the pedophilia in your own ranks. You're gonna ignore all of it you can in order to.
Yeah.
And so I realized, and like Riley was very tightly linked with the back alley crew, to the point where Filthy Heretic was literally, after all of the proof was already posted, telling like telling people that he would support Riley still, that he would still like
Yeah.
be fine with talking to Riley. And so like all of this stuff, and like there was a rule like against talking about me in their server because
Wow.
one of the mods there was being like, preferential to my side, was like, I banned Riley, and I'll do the same to anybody who supports Riley, because this is fucked up and you shouldn't have this like in your ranks. And the fact that any of you accepted this is evil. And that person also got eventually banned. Um, and Esoteric Entity had to wake up from one of his dumb fuck drug binges to come up back to the surface and deal with that, because in like this mod was directly supporting me in a good way, in a
Yeah.
way that was purging this community of a lot of bad sort of actors. Needless to say, this whole time I was getting death threats. Needless to say, this
Oh
whole
yeah.
time
Oh yeah.
I
I'm
was
sure.
getting I was getting people, like, there was this whole big thing because one of the things that I was going against was Pinochet fetishizing Hobbyianism, and one of the groups of people involved there eventually started to propose what they were calling a Lulbert cost, um, directly and
Uh,
repeatedly making content that was implying I should be killed. Um, Among a variety of other people. Most notably because we were like in favor at all and supporting at all of LGBT anything. Um,
yeah.
so like this general mentality and vibe, I just noticed that they were willing to coddle it and support it, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter how many times I called them out or how reasonable I was in doing so. And so I developed this derogatory term for these people. I called them the cartoon ANCAPs. And I started to realize that these cartoon ANCAPs were kind of just, they weren't exactly the minority. That a
No.
significant a significant amount of these people would just wanted to LARP online and get fucking cred and join their circle jerks and be part of this fucking useless slag off community of bullshitters.
Yeah, not only
So
that, but they were getting hold of people who were actually more of a real deal and pulling them into that stuff.
yeah, and so like there are so many people in those circles who are still loosely affiliated with those circles and who didn't like me, but meanwhile I was calling out accurately fascism on so many of these occasions and authoritarian right-wing sentiment, and the person running the Liberty Hangout page what turned into like a virulent Trump supporter because he
Mm-hmm.
started to bang Caitlyn Bennett, and like the other guy, Jared Howe, he like eventually became an out and out Nazi, um, and like had his content syndicated on Christopher Crying Nazi Cantwell's website, who also used to be anarchist but became an outright Nazi, um, and
Mm.
like Eric July is over here just backing the anti-woke grift solid, to the point of backing like truly terrible people who are affiliated with Nazis. And it's just
Yeah.
like it's this constant fucking feedback loop of jackoffs and evil and grift, and like so that pushed me really far into the direction of I need to get away from this, um and find people who are still there, who are genuinely interested in liberty, but I also need to pull back from this and actually assess who in these spaces, any spaces at all, is interested in liberty, try to form unity with them, and like, it doesn't matter if they're left or right, it doesn't matter if they're, fucking anything in between. What matters is their position on the y-axis, like getting
Mm-hmm.
closer to that bottom, like more
Yes, follow
libertarian.
that line.
Yeah. And so, like, a lot of this just boiled down to these motherfuckers are fake as fuck and
Yeah.
oftentimes evil. And I realized that a
Made me
lot of these,
pull out the poser word, and I hadn't used that since the 90s.
yeah. And so, like, I needed to get, like, on board with actual unity, and that's what I've been doing for the past like over half a decade, maybe, you know,
Yeah.
eight-ish years ago. I really started to like get started ish, and then like, a little over half a decade ago, I really started to lean into that, especially reading things like, Samuel Edward Konkin III, and getting into agorism, and realizing that
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Edward Konkin III had the first alliance for the libertarian left, and
Yeah.
actively supported a bunch of like commie adjacent like organizations and market anarchists and the C4SS and like a bunch of people who are legit as fuck.
Yeah.
And realizing that like that is actually a kind of good idea, is to have a unity thing with people on the left and try to like actually isolate that and understand that libertarianism and anarchy, radical positions, typically were on the left, and that it's not wrong to include them. So those sorts of things just
No.
stepped me into that direction. um I did a lot of writing and podcast work with Agorist Nexus toward those ends. And like generally my goal became radicalism. I wanted to learn everything I could about the radicals, and so I started to do things like, reading Bakunin, reading Kaczynski, reading all these like sort of more fringe people. Like, if you're a terrorist, I want to read your content. Fucking like becoming that person, that sort of edgy. And so like now I'm sort of just on the other end of that, being like, yeah, yeah, there's some merit to a lot of these people's points, and we should understand that and try to work with as many of these people as possible. So,
Yeah. I kind of feel like along the road, like to along the roads that we were both taking, we both kind of like leaned in almost at the same time. We just still were on different roads running parallel. I kind of wish we'd have run into each other faster, cuz like me ripping the band-aid off would have gone a little buffer, but like it would have been over faster.
eh,
Although you
shit
did help
happens.
me rip the band-aid off because I got in a lot of fights with people over you.
Mm.
Um and we didn't even really know each other. I was just like, I'm not, like, I wasn't going, oh, I know this guy, parasocial argument. I was just like, yeah, well, this doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this? Um, and, like, that helped to radicalize my ass away from the fascism and stuff. And there were other people grabbing hold of me, and pulling on me and tugging me and stuff. And I had very supportive. There are some really good LP people there. And I mean, like, I know you know that because you still like you talk some mad shit about the LP, but at the same time, when you see people doing stuff that's right, you kind of reach out.
Oh
You
yeah.
you encourage that a lot. I've noticed like you even keep more LP people around than I do, and I used to have a bunch of them, but most of them fell off the table, and I'm very sad about it. But like being able to like hang out around you and like around them and stuff has actually like been really nice. It's so hard to get people to come from the furthest, oops, let me just punch my microphone, from the furthest reaches, to come into the center. And I know we all have kind of our own tactics and stuff like that, but you talk a lot about pan anarchy. Is that basically your tactic? Everybody's always asking me what pan anarchy even is. Do you think you might be willing to like explain that to people in your own words at least?
Well, so I mean, it's basically just trying to like it's the acceptance of all schools of anarchic thought. So like anarchos simply means no rulers. It doesn't mean no
Mm-hmm.
rules. You can
Right.
build like rules for your own society, and there's a significant amount of like overlap in pretty much all anarchist schools of thought. The question is normally like, well, if X person believes Y, then how can they be anarchist? But those things generally boil down to semantics and phrasing and shit. And to me, I sort of see it as a different, like the same words, but a different language. And like they're saying very similar things. They're like on a very similar wavelength, but like um, they say like, for instance, oh, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. And like I oppose the state in all its forms, you know, and I just want them out of interfering in the market. Well, that's market anarchy. Or
Mhm.
like some of these market anarchists are, you know, like like opposed to things like landlords and mass land grabs and shit like that, and they want resources much more like convenient to use. So like
Mhm.
you can get them on board with property norms under a mutualist framework, and some mutualists um, oppose property on a much more fundamental level, and those people are much closer to the communists, and the communists a lot of the time oppose the conditions of work and would like much rather like improve society to the point where we've got the technology necessary to move us in like a work free direction. And those people might have overlap with the transhumanists, and the transhumanists oftentimes, you know, they'll have some like, oh, I just want to become the best version of a human I can, and like really amp up my individual potential. And those
Mhm.
people like have overlap with the individualists, and the individualists a lot of the time have some overlap in that regard because they're individualist, and a lot of their philosophy is focused on the self. Um, with like, you know, trying to achieve a more egoist mentality,
Mhm.
and the egoists oftentimes have rather strong sympathy with the like the like more nihilist people, and the nihilist people are like oftentimes sympathetic with the illegalists, and the illegalists the agorists, and the agorists the, you know, the ANCAPs, because agorism started as a branch off from ANCAP. And when you realize that it's this interconnected web of sort of ideas that aren't nearly as parallelly like polarly opposed as like they claim, and are more like parallel or perpendicular in a lot of ways, you can sort of start to build this web and realize that they can all sort of work together. And the
Mhm.
point of panarchy is like you build your own thing in your own way, and as long as we're on the same mission of getting rid of the dominant structures that want to control us, you know, we should be able to work together fine. Like the intersectionality between queer anarchy and feminist anarchy and black anarchy, and like all of these like sort of more niche like philosophies, but they're all like around this central idea: the structure of oppression must be stopped, you know, or insert any innumerable amount of other things. And specifically, I'm writing still, it's been years, but I'm sort of picking away at it. I'm writing a book on my particular form of it, which is anarcho coalitionism. And the point of it is building and breaking ad hoc coalitions that can like issue target certain things for the purpose of destroying the state. And like, if you can get people to agree, even temporarily, even for the point of like getting something done, to work with one another, that's a much better thing than the state would want, because the state wants us fighting each other. The state wants us hating each other. The state wants us at such odds that what happened to
Yeah.
me is what happens whenever anybody steps out of
To
line.
everybody. Mhm.
Eh.
And you know, like everybody wants to say, "Oh, if someone bullied me like that, I'd be fine." But like, man, that shit is rough. Like, you seem to come through it just kind of like continuing to roll with all the punches and stuff. But I mean, like, I bet there were like really rough days for you and all of that. Like, how did you get through those that stuff? Like, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to push back in various spaces, and like, if you could give somebody any advice, like somebody who was in that circle of hyenas like you have been, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, so the general thing that I would say to start with is recognize this is all based on trauma. Very little
Mm-hmm.
of it is not. These people are not lashing out because they were born to lash out. You know, the vast majority of them are doing this because they have some sort of issue in their lives that made them seek the authoritarian route. And like some sort of issue in their life that made them more sympathetic to some sort of abject evil, right?
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, like, it's not even necessarily just running that way, because, like, I was
yeah,
just hurt and scared, and it made me not think good.
yeah. And so and that's the thing, like they'll pull you in. They'll do trauma bonding exercises in a lot of these statist
Yes,
circles.
yes, yes. Woof.
They'll
That's
like
insidious shit, too.
they'll either like haze you into it and make you okay with like the treatment that they're giving you, like to the point where at the end of it they're like, oh, kumbaya, we all love each other, we were really toxic to you, but you should accept that because now you're part of the based crew, you made it. You
Yeah,
know, like that happens so many times. Or they'll put you in this situation where you're like up against all these other people, and then when you come out of it on the other side saying like things like, oh, we should throw commies out of helicopters and 6 million wasn't enough and shit like that, then they'll say, based, you're one of us now.
yeah.
It's like they'll try
Positive
to,
reinforcement.
yeah, after negative, like they'll push you against either some of their own elements who they can use to program, or they'll push you
Mm-hmm.
against other people's elements that they can use to program, and then they'll be come here, brother, you're one of us now, and now you must fight our wars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that in so many of these other, like, history just is riddled with examples of shit like this.
Oh, yeah.
So recognizing that everybody is breaking out of programming in one way or another, or they are still subject to it, that's necessary. It's necessary to
Yeah.
start from the knowledge that, like, and this is a very Misesian thing to say, that people are rational actors engaging in rational market action. And the reason that they chose these people, the reason that they chose these circles, is not because they think it's irrational and unreasonable to be this way.
Yeah.
It's because they think it's totally rational. And you have to come at them from the good faith perspective of knowing that and being like, yo, here's your precepts. Here's the things you really hold dear. Are you going to stick with these even if it indicts your people? For instance, there's a significant amount of people who support like authoritarian right wing influencers and still at the same time claim to oppose grooming. They do this in order to say, oh, gays against groomers and libs against TikTok, they're my heroes. I jack off to Haya Rychek tit pics on my AI software generator. Like the general like vibe among a lot of these people is, I don't like, pedophiles, and the left is degenerate. And but then you can point to these people and be like, well, didn't you just support a Nick Fuentes video? Did you see this video where he said he wants a pristine, untouched, innocent 16-year-old? Sorry, 15-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
Did you see this thing where Matt Walsh said 16-year-old girls are adults, and throughout history this was acceptable? Did you see this, like this? Did you see H. Pearl Davis say 16-year-olds are hotter than 24-year-olds? Did you see
Yeah.
the people in your pipeline, in your corner, in your bracket being the kinds of people that like you claim that you're against? If so, are you one of the principled people who's going to walk away and be like, yo, this shit ain't acceptable? Andrew Tate groomed children, and he used those children he groomed as the bottom bitches in his fucking sex trafficking
Yep.
ring, where he scammed a bunch of dudes. Is this my symbol of masculinity? Is this my symbol of right wing liberation? Is this my symbol of anti woke culture? Wait, why am I anti woke? You can sort of start to pull them away from that. And
Yeah.
similarly, there are some people on the left who have endorsed quite a few terrible things of their own. And
Mm-hmm.
you can point to the,
That actually is why I was traumatized and hurt and scared and freaking out, was because of something that had happened on the left.
yeah, go
Because
for it.
that's where I was, Like, I was there, and, like, there was actually an assault involved and a disagreement over how to handle someone accidentally misgendering me. And, like, I wouldn't get angry and berate the person. I was trying to, like, just, hey, yeah, it's this. And they were like, oh, okay, cool. And they, like, left, and there was no problem. And these people are just mad at me because I didn't give him what for. And it started an argument, and there was actually an assault in the middle of a place that is supposed to be safe for queer people. It was a pride thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I, for a moment there, became completely blind to reason and was like in self defense mode. And just like you said with the wholesome trauma bonding, they're like puking up behind me, going, hey, yeah, they did that shit to me too. They're absolutely dangerous and crazy. You come over here, it'll be fine. You're different. You're not like them. Come here.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it just you're speaking my story here kind of a little bit. I'm sorry, keep going, please. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to interrupt. It just you're talking my language for sure because this shit is like still traumatizing me a little bit.
Right. And like so the left will say, they'll come strong, and the pedo issue is a great sort of Lynch issue here, because it's like when you
Mm-hmm.
realize how many people like are hypocrites in this regard, they'll be like, oh, we'll call out Nick Fuentes, we'll call out Matt Walsh, we'll do all this stuff. But then when you bring up Scott Ritter and how he
Yeah.
literally twice tried to fuck kids, suddenly a bunch of these leftists will act very
And
strong
change their
against
mind.
you. Yep. And when you bring up the fact that Vouch has sus files on his fucking computer, suddenly you're part of the problem. And it's just all this shit, you know? It's like when you end up like realizing how deep the corruption web goes, um, you realize that the problem is everyone. And that until we
Mm-hmm.
realize that, until we're willing to do something and like actually unite against the problems, we're just being pitted against each other. We're fucking pawns. And like, so realizing that a lot of people are pawns to a structure, to a system that hates them, that is the prime thing. Because like everybody's just traumatized. Everybody's like trying to figure shit out, trying to heal, trying to
Mm-hmm.
improve in one way or another. And you could either be one of the people there being like, let me fucking like cut your hand as soon as you reach it out to me because it doesn't have the right tattoos,
Mm-hmm.
or like being like, oh, you didn't performatively signal the left to the right thing that I wanted you to, so you're not a good person. It's all these little things where like a lot of people are actively counterproductive in a lot of ways. Like, yes, you can recognize the fascism. Yes, you can recognize the tanky, and you can recognize that these like things are not things that we should encourage
Right.
as anarchists. But if your next response is to just completely essentialize and dismiss these people and treat them like shit, that ain't gonna work for anybody. And so like that's what these people would rather you not do. These people would rather you just take their side and be like, now you're on this side. These people would rather
Mm-hmm.
you not work with the other side. And part of the reason is it's really profitable. It's really profitable. Like if you're taking a side, if you're left or right, you can be like that tribalist cunt and you can be like, the left is the entire problem. The right is the entire problem. And you could do
Well, yeah,
that
and it keeps
all
us
fucking
from
day.
dealing with the actual problems.
Yeah.
Anything to keep us distracted from what's actually going on.
Yeah, and like, to be fair, the right is the prevailing economic and social driving factor these days.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's not, but
No,
that
it
doesn't mean that we
is.
should swing hard to the opposite direction and start throwing our political opponents against the wall. You know? It's
You.
it's like, and so many of these people are like that. So many of these people are like, fucking I've developed my fucking toxic online circle jerk, and now unless you reify that, like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. And like it's all armchair shit too. Like a lot of these people
Yeah.
just, they are not interested in offline practice.
Paper anarchists.
Yeah. They're not doing shit. What they're doing is they're hoping that you join their side, subscribe to their Patreon, which, by the way, if y'all want to boost me
Mm-hmm.
over 65, you can do that. And there's plenty of
Yeah,
like
the,
ways to support MLTP.
there's
Um,
some links down there at the bottom here and in the description.
eh. And like they want this ecosystem to support them, so they're all
Mm-hmm.
like saying the same shit. They're all part of the like. There's this entire like thing, this entire conservative media apparatus that's all surrounded by this one company called the Wellness Company, and that's a
Oh,
rabbit hole that
yeah.
I'm sort of exploring. But like these people are all connected to that like particular brand, and that particular brand is the ones like, oh, colloidal
That's
silver,
some bullshit.
emergency supplies. Here's your fucking like your 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 fucking alpha brain clone, your fucking, they're all doing this shit and they're all part of the same sort of like ecosystem, and they're all like, supporting each other in the same way. They're all parts of these same rooms. And it's like that with Zionist media too. Like Destiny literally says he's getting coached by senior Jews about how to like, you know, apologize for the genocide in Gaza. Like it's like so many cases. Like there's so many, or like, the Vouch pit in
Just
like on
weirdness.
Discord. Yeah, and like I directly have had run-ins with multiple leftist groups on social media that treated me like shit for criticizing people. So like it's not just on the right. And it's like there's this one, and I'm still sort of exploring and investigating some shit in this regard. But there's this one that I'm not going to mention because of that, where like I fucking just I asked people to prove that like one of the things that they said about another content creator was true, and I was called a toxic Twitter mentality person and told that if I didn't apologize, if the next thing I said wasn't an apology for asking for basic logical like fucking standards and not treating the outsider poorly because they're an outsider, I would be banned. And so
Yeah.
I just sort of like I shut up. I didn't get banned. I shut up, and like after like some amount of time, I'm going to be going against everything these people believe because they're authoritarians. They did not like
Yeah.
me being an anarchist. So
Oh
like
no.
that's what a lot of these places are. They are authoritarians in one way or another, and they're here to like control shit. They're here to have a narrative. They're here to get people reifying that narrative, and they're here
Yeah.
to have those people that reify their narrative never question it and keep their brand strong.
Well,
So
yeah, contrary to what other people believe, like, there's two sides of the culture war, and they're both in on it together because it's a huge cash cow, and it keeps meaningful change from being created.
yeah, for sure.
You know, it's just, they're gonna invest on both sides, and the statists are all in.
Yeah,
It's
and
just
like
so disturbing. So disturbing. Statists have never been cool, honestly, but, like, wow, have I never seen them so not okay.
yeah, and so like if you can pick one of those sides, if you can position yourself as the right or the left, then you can say the left is the bad guy, support me and we'll
Mm-hmm.
fight the bad guy. If you can say that you're the right, sorry, the left and the right is the bad guy, then you can say that the right is the bad guy, support me and we'll fight the bad guys. If you're saying both of these people who make up the majority of like consumers and creators are the bad guy, help me and we'll fight the bad guy, suddenly you have a much smaller
Suddenly
pool of
it's,
people to support.
yeah, yeah, I've noticed that too. Like, the enemy looks like it looks scarier too. Like, I mean, if you tell everybody, hey, that whole tsunami over there, not just the part that's on the left or the right, the whole dang thing is about to crash down on everybody. We gotta pull together and deal with it. And they're like, you know
Yeah,
what? I left my crock pot on. I gotta, you find yourself standing with fewer people, and like, it's really sad because, like, I remember when I started pushing forward towards the unity thing, and I see
yeah,
it in other people when it happens too. Like, you lose half of almost everybody that you thought was your friend. And
exactly.
in some cases, they literally just become your enemy and start threatening to kill you and stuff. It
Many
can get
such
really
cases.
wild. Oh yeah, me too. I mean, yay, trauma bond.
Yeah,
Speaking of trauma bonding, now we
yep,
just bond over the death threats for unity and stuff. It's
exactly.
really nice to be able to find other people out there though. And like, you've been kind of like, I noticed that, so like kind of like pulling it back a little bit to the stuff, like, I noticed that we noticed that, like, you've been doing like content creation of various formats for a really long time, and or off and on at least. And like, it's really neat that we could see like your whole shift through, because like one of the things that we do is I'll go open up a space and be like, okay, this is for this person. Y'all help me look for stuff. And people
Hmm.
are like, whoa, what is this? And I'm like, that'll get explained. Don't freak out. That'll get explained.
For sure.
In this case, because they were like, what is this? And I was like, just wait. We'll talk about that. And we've already actually talked about that and everything. I didn't even have to ask about it.
Yeah.
Um, because like it's kind of like an intricate part of how you got here and how like you came to these things and got your inspiration and stuff. I i just like think that I just want to say that it's really nice to see other people out there fighting. I keep saying that, I know, but like, man, it's an inspiration to see other people out there who are consistent and not falling to one side or the other. These days, the most important thing to me is consistency at this point. Like if you're gonna grow into a change or whatever, that's not inconsistency. That's just growth. But
Hmm.
like there are so many people who look at that and they're like, "Oh, you've changed," and I'm like, "Well, I grew."
Hmm.
Um, and like you always stayed kind of like parallel to me, and I really appreciate that. Some days when I feel like I'm by myself, I'll like just turn on TV or something, and I would look at like, or turn on the computer and look at like the YouTube or the Twitter or something, and just see you out there doing it, and I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not the only one, obviously. There's a whole bunch of us out there and everything. Um, and like you can find people can find groups out there wherever they want.
Hmm.
Um, but like obviously, if you want to like get in contact with either of us, we can pull you into some like topside chill stuff and everything. Um, and everybody doesn't like have to get along, but like, yeah, keeping an eye on people when everybody starts to like lean towards one direction or the other in your spaces and stuff, it just being aware of that, because like if you don't, you can like look down and then look back up and oops, all Nazis.
Yeah.
And you didn't even realize it. That's happened to me a few times because like I get busy. I'll get busy doing some activism or something, and then I'll lean back into my digital life and be like, holy fuck, what the hell?
Hmm.
Um, and like, yeah, so it's just so amazing that we have people who have been like consistently growing into unity and stuff like that. And I'm really excited to see how like more people on like I guess the extreme edges of both directions of anarchy's leanings and stuff like that have started to become a little bit more open to the idea of it. Um, but like we all have our different like tactics of doing that stuff, of bringing people to
Right.
the table.
Yeah.
And like I talk about my tactics all the time. um and you've talked about a little bit of your stuff here, but like, what do you think are your are you willing to give up your best tactic? Like, what do you do with people? How do you get people to sit down at the table and actually like listen or speak without literally lighting the whole house on fire? Because like you create places for people to do this. So like, how do you do that? What kind of tactics do you put in play?
So the most important thing is a word that a lot of people hate, and some of those people are very stupid.
Uh-oh.
Intersectionality.
Mm.
That's it. Like,
I got
if you,
spooked on that for a little while too.
yeah, like we all have certain elements of oppression. We are all crushed by the machine in one way or another, and recognizing how all of those things enmesh is how we move forward. Getting like
Mm-hmm.
actually better at recognizing all these little like points of interweaving in our like oppression from the system is how we can move forward and up. And like, so here's an example, okay? Um Feminists are opposed to like patriarchal societies, and one of the ways that they have opposed those patriarchal societies is opposing female genital mutilation in societies that are patriarchal and
Yeah.
theocratic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a reasonable thing to do because that sucks. And
Yeah.
with those people, you know, you can say equally that it sucks that the first memory that a lot of men have um, is of having their foreskin forcibly cut off their dick when they're a baby. Like
Yeah.
that's the reason
Do
a
people
lot of
actually
dudes are
remember that?
traumatized.
I didn't actually know that.
It's like scientifically linked to greater issues with trauma, bedwetting,
Ooh, it's
like
even worse than I thought
neuroses.
then.
Yeah, like you will have a whole lot of issues later on in life that you don't even know where they came from, because the first thing that happened to you once you exited the womb and felt safe and shit was a piece of you was cut off
Was that you
without
were hurt?
anesthesia while you were strapped down. Um,
That's,
and so
yeah.
like
Oof.
in America, one of those is banned and one of those is not. You can't do a female genital mutilation in America. So you can say, yes, we should oppose patriarchal societies overseas, anarcho feminists, or feminists
Yeah.
in general. Um, but we should also understand that the men's struggle here is important as well and oppose this barbaric practice here as well, saying that it doesn't matter that it's somebody's religion or some father wants their son to look like them or et cetera, et cetera. You know, like it should be stopped. And that's an intersection of oppression. We can be like, society does not respect our sexual autonomy. Society wants us to be at each other's throats as men
Mm-hmm.
versus women in so many of these petty little struggles, rather than like saying uh, we should get on the same page, we should oppose genital mutilation entirely, and there's one of the fun parts is that you can also then use that to intersect with LGBT people in the trans community and be like, uh, if you want to really hit these people back, say, if you're so opposed to genital mutilation, why does your church
Mutilations.
support circumcision?
Mm-hmm.
Which is more common than any sort of trans surgery. And that's not even mutilation to begin with. It's like literally like fucking um there's a term for it. Uh if I remember it, I'll remember it. Basically voluntary. I wanted to say vocational, but that's not the term. It's like
I mean,
it's
there
it
is an overlap there that you could utilize, and
yeah,
I've utilized before, which is intersex baby
yes.
gender assignment surgeries, which is that is mutilation.
Yes. Exactly. And so you can come to these intersections. You can realize that the state has, like, in various places and in various ways, authorized the mutilation of people for,
Of our
like,
children.
yeah, for their own benefit. Because, like, it makes it easier. Well, fuck you then. It should be harder. It should be harder
Yeah.
to not violate people's bodily autonomy. And then you realize that that translates so many other places. They see us as the same kind of meat to be modified and molded in the workplace. They see us as the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of meat to be modified and molded in the schools, in the media, in various statist churches, in various like organizations, in like the military, in police, in all of these things. It's just they want to mold, control, and force us into being a cog in their machine, and they don't care what they have to cut off of us in order to do that.
Right.
Um, and so it's all these little modes, and when you can get people thinking on this wavelength
On
of
this wavelength,
they
yeah.
have taken it from me, they have taken something from me, they have oppressed me in some way, and they've also oppressed these other people in these other ways,
In very
you
similar
can
ways, yeah.
shake hands in so many circumstances. The divides can be shut down in so many ways.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's
like the amount of times that that particular specific circumstances that have has actually happened with me is like innumerable. But like, but the intersectionality, it doesn't even have to be that. You can use it on anything, like
mm-hmm.
anywhere. That's a
Yeah,
really excellent tactic to be paying attention to, and like you can always build on that. It kind of goes along the lines of like some of the best advice I got when I first started trying to speak to people was stop telling people what you want and find out what they want. And
right.
this is right along the lines of that. It's what they need. I think that's great. Like,
It's like this Marilyn Manson quote in Bowling for Columbine, where like fucking the guy was asking him, fucking Michael Moore was asking him, like, the Columbine kids were really into your music. What would you tell them? And he's like, I wouldn't tell them anything. I would listen to them, which is something nobody else ever did. You got to listen to them. You got to listen to people. You got to
mm-hmm.
find out their vibe, and then you match that vibe.
Well, I hope that, like, what? So, oh, wait, did I lose sound? Or are you still here?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay, good, good. There was a weird buzzing noise, and I was like, oh no, what happened? I don't know what that was. I'm getting strange noises. The feds are trying to mess with me.
Yeah,
My
right.
MK Ultra's going. My MK Ultra's acting up. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Um,
about to be
that's a
activated.
joke. I'm about to be activated. Oh dear. They're
Yeah,
gonna activate the. Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud.
yeah.
Anyways, like I really, like I asked you about like what's your favorite tactic and stuff like that. What do you think is like the hardest thing, like that you have to deal with, like the most difficult thing to deal with, and like like in either the day to day or the serious parts, whatever. Like, what do you think is hardest?
The hardest is watching like the effort seemingly fail. The hardest thing is seeing people seemingly walk away from what I'm trying to accomplish, or from their own healing process back into the arms of the authoritarians, or of like these people just gradually moving back toward like the mentalities that had already hurt them. Like, that is the worst. The worst thing is knowing that somebody was hurt to begin with. They were like hurt by the people that like took them in, and then you took them in, and then they were hurt afterward, like in some way that made them leave. Like, that's for me the hardest thing. I've watched that happen on a variety of occasions, being like doing an autopsy on what I could have done differently and trying to like,
Differently.
yeah, like there's this guy, and like I'm not gonna say what his name is in case he ever comes back to the fold. I don't want him fucking like seeing this and being like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
you put me on blast. But like,
yeah.
let me be real. This guy, he was not a bad person. He really wasn't. He was trying to understand everything. He was young. He was like, fucking like he was in our group chats and trying to like be a friend, and a variety of other shit. And like, it went really well for a significant period of time, and we had his back for a significant period of time. I added somebody to the group chat who turned out to be a problem. And the reason I added this guy to the group chat, this other guy to the group chat, was because he was expressing some like understandings that the world is corrupt and that we need to do something about that. It was also like affiliated with like some right-wing people in podcasting, and that helped me get in there. So like I wanted to like try and build some bridges. But this guy turned out to be a snake in the grass. He had already been catfishing somebody for a significant period of time. And one of the things that happened to this other guy, that the first guy I mentioned, guy A, was he was being consistently treated like shit by hockey Twitter, and like a variety of other things in his life. And one of the people that like didn't do that eventually started flaking on him, and a bunch of unnecessary accusations came out that weren't true about him being a terrible person for a variety of reasons that didn't make any fucking sense. And we had his back. He was in a relationship with this person, and let's just say that didn't go well and eventually stopped. So he started looking for other people and feeling really down on himself. And so we tried to encourage him to be more confident, right? Um, and it was pretty like good for a while. And like then he gets with this person, and like she's all that to him. She gets him, and it's like chemistry. But then we start to ask things like, why is she not showing you her face? Why is she not you know, interfacing with you at all? Do you really trust this person? Um, and basically, what it turned out in the end was that, like, for a while there, this person had been catfishing him, and
Ugh.
they knew everything about him because they were in the same chats. And basically, uh, long story short, um, I knew something was wrong. I knew it, and I had seen this person's trailer before or whatever that they lived in, and I recognized the ceilings and all this stuff. And when this woman eventually sent him a face pic, I was like, that looks like him. And I kept saying that, and apparently I was right. Apparently I should have stuck with that and I shouldn't have backed off. I should have been like, get her to send you a video, get her on a video
Mm-hmm.
call, get her on regular video calls. There's no excuse for it. Um, and this person, because I just didn't apply the gas a little more, got catfished for a long time and then eventually put on blast by the person who I eventually had to remove from all of the circles with which we're involved. This person was then got with somebody very far right wing. And I'm not going to make any comments on their relationship because that's not what I'm here for. But what I am going to say is that that person was real and a real woman, and a woman who was not there catfishing him or treating him like shit or trying to get him exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also very far right. And
Oof.
so he is now very far right. And it seems like the paths have diverged and there's no way that that can be reconciled. And I use it in my brain. It sucks to think about. It occasionally chokes me up because a place that I could have been better with, a person that I could have just been more confident in my assessment about, like and a person that I wanted to be there for, I wasn't. That's one example, of many examples of people just not being in the fold anymore, not being in the circles anymore. And after a while of that, after a while of people just falling off, it's just that's what gets to me. And so I try to recognize the patterns. I try to recognize the patterns where people are falling off, and I try to, at any potential point that I can, prevent that from happening, because that's what sucks. What sucks, I I've gotten so many death threats. People have tried to dox my family and me. They've directly, they've tried to smear me as a pedophile on a variety of occasions with exactly zero proof. They've Jocelyn Glaybach, the redheaded libertarian, sent her pack of hyena audience after me.
Oh yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
yeah, so many examples of just people becoming a mob against me and making my mentions hell. And some people still make my mentions severely damaging to read. And I'm not going to pretend that the rest of it is roses, but the thing that really sucks the most is losing people. Is losing people from my circles where I could have done more and didn't. And now I hit that hard every time I could do something, every time I could do something to keep somebody and to prevent them from going to that shift. I try to do it. I try to make that happen, because unity is what's important here. Unity, not me, not anything in my life, actually getting people on board and not feeling like they've got to escape me in the same way that they have to escape the state. Ain't gonna
Yeah.
fucking happen.
Man, that is also extremely relatable. Like, all of this is so relatable because, like, one of the parts that causes me the most burnout is when people, quote, as I say, fall off the table. And, like, I know there's not always something that we could have done, but I do find myself going over everything, trying to remember and notice where they started to slide, where they started to divert, what was going on, so I can, like, I know I can't necessarily just reach back and pull them back, because, like, a lot of times, if they're gone, they're gone. But
Yeah.
maybe we can use that later. Like, that's what I try to do, is try to pull things together to use later to maybe keep that from happening.
We
I
got to learn from
really,
history.
really, really worry. Hey, look, speaking of which, it's happening again. Oh, we love it. Hey, haters. Thanks for tuning in, getting us some engagement. Mwah. But yeah, I really hate it when people do that and they just fall off, and like it gets difficult. Like, the bigger your community gets, the harder it is to keep an eye on everybody. And I don't mean to like be going around like spying on each other or anything. It's just, if you notice that someone's having a hard time, you gotta reach down and like put your hand on their shoulder and tell them, hey, like, what's going on? What's up with this? What's going on with this stuff? If you if you let it go too long, it'll be too late to bring it up. Like, you gotta do it then, and don't let go. And God, that's it's the most depressing thing. There have been so many people, especially along the market and trad spaces, that are just falling off the table in droves, going straight towards far right bullshit. And just falling straight into statism. And it's so the the falling off, I don't even think they all understand it. I don't think they've all even realized what has happened to them. And like you said,
For
like,
sure.
they're in trauma. They've got to be in trauma. We're all in trauma. Everybody's in trauma. But, like, the way we respond to it, it's hard to relate to sometimes with people like that. But putting the brakes on a little bit, you never know who you're going to bring in. You never know who you're going to stop from going into the state and, like, undoing themselves and stuff. I
Yeah.
have I have some we've covered most of the questions that people gave me, but I do have a few that stand on the side that don't really fit into the mode of discussion. Do you mind if I just like hit you with those?
Go for it.
um I mean, it's not really smooth or anything, but let's do this shit. So, like, the first one was, what in the hell is up with all the Sonic? Why do you do that?
So the thing about the Sonic stuff is that the culture surrounding the franchise is excellent. The franchise itself is like directly freedom promoting. The whole point is that like you're supposed to be an individual fighting for freedom against the conformist machines that literally want to enslave you. And it has a whole lot of actual philosophy baked into it, most notably anti-fascist stuff. And when I started to really look into the Sonic franchise, like I've been a fan for like, you know, 20, like over 20 years now. And when I started to look into it when I was like 10, I was like, this is fucking great. You know, like I started to my sister and I would bond with it. We would trade off levels and shit. And like it was a real strong way to keep the family together. Um but like it became beyond that because I started to read the comics. I started to look into like the sort of the extended philosophies associated with it. As like because of the type of bipolar I am, I like info gather during my
Mm-hmm.
manias. Um, and so like I sort of started to pull in all these things, like what does these themes mean? What is this? And like it's excellent. It's just everybody's got their own struggles, everybody's got their own traumas, everybody's got their own cultural differences that landed them on certain struggles and like on certain sides of certain things. Certain people were pulled into the enemies and like can be redeemed. Certain people are too married to the evil to join the struggle against it. You know, like it's actually a very thorough franchise. It's got if I counted correctly, over 1,000 comics at this point. It's got like hundreds of TV episodes and movies. It's got all these games and all this excellent music. And the fan community is oftentimes an excellent group of people who are of a variety of different genders, sexes, races, like nationalities, interests in different things, and
Yeah.
the vast majority of them are like willing to talk about the Sonic franchise with you. So it's like it's a sort of it's a welcoming thing. It's a thing that's like one of the original things in this franchise was like directly like in Sonic Adventure 2, there's a government program where they are building a super weapon under the guise of like trying to heal somebody. And they're using the research that was allegedly supposed to be there for healing to create this ultimate life form bioweapon. And so they do that. They create the hedgehog shadow, and then when the guy who thought that the project was designed to heal his daughter finds out that no, in fact, they're using it to create a weapon, he started to object and protest. And like, there's a big struggle on board, and there's like, there's this government like cover up thing where they start to kill everybody on board and scrap all the research, like sort of an MK Ultra Watergate kind of deal. And then like Shadow gets ejected into an escape pod from this space colony where all this was happening by Maria, the daughter of the original Robotnik, and like he gets scuttled to Earth while watching her get shot in front of him, and that was huge for me. That kind of mentality, that kind of thing was like, this is a franchise that's theoretically for kids talking about government murder and cover-ups and like the industrial complexes that pervade shit. And like the general vibe of the franchise is that it's like, we're going to stop oppression, we're going to fight for freedom, we're going to, end the enslavement and help you get back on your feet, we're going to, create the new society, that sort of thing. It's kind of nice to just be able to escape for a moment to a world where like people actually give a fuck about liberty, and where like they're using actual like real world struggles in order to say that it's in fact okay to fight the fascists, it's okay to fight the totalitarians, the people who want to oppress you. That's what Sonic
Hmm.
is like the Sonic Adventure Manual says that the only thing Sonic hates is oppression. That's basically it. And
Yeah,
like,
basically.
I want you to be free. That's a recent quote from one of the Sonic comics where he's talking to one of the villains, because he's saying that it's okay that you had a traumatic past, and you fell in with the wrong crowd. Let's have a do-over. Come on my side and we'll like actually do some good for once. That's the mentality. It's like a unity mentality, it's a freedom mentality, things pushing in the right direction. That's why I like the franchise a lot. Also because the art is great, the music is great, the stories are great. So it's a good way to sort of get people on board with freedom, is to get them started in that regard.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
I I think that metaphoring like forms of entertainment and stuff to or genres or even like actual titles and stuff is really really helpful. Like it's helped us a lot with like the whole Wonderland thing. Um, I mean, sometimes we kind of play it out a little harder at times, but I mean, like you do too sometimes. It's pretty cool. I really enjoy the way that you pull that in. Another one of the questions that I have that I didn't work in was so your name and like you seem to be attached to the word agora a lot. And a couple of people asked about that and wanted to know if you've been an agorist, if you are an agorist, and if you could like give a newbie's explanation of what that is, because we used to have a video about it. And speaking of people who fell off the table, I pulled their shit down after they did, and like we had Sal on here talking about how like about Agora and stuff like that. But all of that is unavailable now because when he started doing weird statey things and playing the culture war, I was like, no, no
Mhm.
more of that.
Yep.
I don't want to accidentally lead people to that. Can you make us a new clip about Agora? Are you an agorist?
So here's the rough outline of agorism. It is there's multiple types of markets. There's the white market. That's you're just doing what's legal. You're buying stuff from Walmart. You're tax paying American, that sort of mentality. That's the white market. Then there's multiple shades on multiple different levels. There's the pink market and the red market, where varying levels of aggression take place, like extortion, murder, assassination, uh, child trafficking. You avoid those as an agorist. Like agorists have a
Mm-hmm.
strict ethical
Yeah.
code where
No red market.
yeah, no red market, no pink market. And the reason that they're shaded that way is because there's also the gray and the black market, which agorists are encouraged to participate in, which are markets that are not unethical, not like aggressive, but either skirt or totally exist outside of the state. Um, and so, if you're, for instance, an agorist, you have to oppose pedophilia. You have to oppose things like Epstein, and his whole like shtick. You also have to oppose corporations in general because they're arms and creations of the state. And in doing so, you have to realize that they're parts of the pink and red market. And so it's basically like try to be ethical in as many areas of your life as possible and revoke your consent and participation in the unethical markets as much as you can. That's the general vibe of agorism, and the reason agorists worked with the libertarian left is because a lot of people on the libertarian right were still married to a variety of capitalist concepts that get in the way of being
Mm-hmm.
completely ethical. So, yeah, that's the general vibe. You're trying to reduce your involvement and participation and support of the machine so that it can eventually be completely destroyed and be much smaller at the time when you do that than it otherwise would be, because you're actually taking steps concretely to move against it and not participate. If everybody started to do gray and black market shit as their primary markets, the state would have instant revenue cuts. The state would have so much less support, um, and they would have a whole lot less, a whole lot harder time infiltrating cultures because we would be so connected to one another, engaging in the agora, which is the market. It's the Greek word for market. Uh,
Yeah.
that we would be able to move in that direction, like with less state control, less state interference, less of the state being able to be like, you know what, you're so much like us because we're nothing like them. That's the mentality, the general vibe. I don't know. It's kind of a jank explanation, but yeah, I'm an anarcho-coalitionist, a type of panarchist. I support all anarchist stuff. The agorism stuff is just an area where a significant amount of agorists vibed with what I have
Yeah.
to say, so I did work with them more specifically. But if you want to pay me to write for your Ancom website and talk about Bakunin and Kropotkin and shit, I'll do that. If you want to, if whatever the thing is wants to support what I do, I will support that in return. That sort of mentality. So it's that vibe. It's like I'm an agorist, but I'm also an ancom, but I'm also an ancap to a certain extent. All of these things. It's like I'm trying to be everything to a certain extent so that I can understand these people and try to move them toward a more central locus of freedom for all and ending the tribalism.
That's semi relatable. We kind of went the opposite on that. Me and you actually like I tried stuff, I tried everything, and then I was like, I'm none of these things, but I can speak the jive of everything, and I will help everyone. So long as you're doing free folk stuff and you're not being authoritarian or trying to like fall off the table into fascism or something, I'm there for it. Um, let's see, what was the other thing? Um,
Oh,
actually, I think we are. Oh,
real
what?
quick, I'm just gonna
Yes.
you know to respond to this cunt in chat. Um, there is literally no result, period, for the word Kiara in the MLTP Discord. I'm looking at it
I
right
don't
now.
even know what that is. I have no
Yeah,
idea what that even means. They're
yeah.
just, I have no idea.
You know, there's a loose possibility that somebody sent some link out, or there's a loose or possibility that there's some impersonator Discord somewhere. But the more concrete part, like possibility, is that these motherfuckers are just making shit up. So, whatever. They're free to like
Yeah, I
let
have
me
no
know.
idea. The people in the chat that are being shitty are the same people. Like connect, they're all buddy with each other, and they have consistently done this stuff. They're just mad because we do actually turn people down in our Discord. If you're not an anarchist or interested in anarchy, we will throw you out. If you have red flags, we will throw you out. Like we will not allow. It's not a public space. It's a, like as we talked about the other day in the last episode, it's a digital collective in third space, and so like yeah, you won't be allowed to come in and stay if you're sussy or weird, like in the fascist way and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so like the the funny stuff is they just keep doing it, like, and it's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Uh, but I mean, it's great as long as they come back and they keep doing stuff like that. They're adding engagement to us, and I can take their actions and place them out and use it to teach the new people. It's
Yeah,
really helpful, actually, like
yeah,
extremely helpful. Just take their sour apples and turn them into some freaking cider.
exactly.
Lemonade is okay, but I prefer cider.
Also, I think this person is just sore because they don't have fucking like they have 5 subs on YouTube. They're pissed off because like other people are doing better.
Uh, I only have a few more questions, and they're all kind of like, so like we have we usually do like this little like lightning round of questions at the end where I ask you like questions that kind of fell that didn't really have like long in-depth answers to give. Are you ready for the lightning round, Jeremiah?
Go for it.
Favorite color?
Black.
Do you pineapple on the pizza or do you not pineapple on the pizza?
Depends on the pizza.
Dogs or cats?
All animals, really.
What is your least favorite social media platform?
Uh, I mean, for lightning question, that's kind of a doozy because like they're all
If
so
you want to
connected.
go into it a little more, you can. Go ahead. That was the last one, anyways.
Facebook
I got
is
most of the questions worked into this whole thing already.
Facebook is a CIA and Bilderberg controlled op designed to scrape as much information as possible so that they can, censor, silence, and control people, and to like keep people funneled toward their bullshit. Twitter is very similar, only it's controlled by the World Economic Forum, the Saudi Arabian government, and Elon Musk, and a variety of other shit that I could mention. Like Gab is just Nazis and fake Christians. Like Reddit is like somewhat still stable, but they're still basically sold out, making people pay for like bots to moderate their shit and shit. Like so many examples of things that I could think of that just make every social media app garbage. And even the ones that are like less garbage in principle turn out to be more garbage in practice because those things are just alternates. So when the scumbags get banned from other places, they go there. And so even though Bastion, for instance, is something that I could recommend people join from a strict hardware standpoint, fuck Bastion for a lot of the people over there. It's one of those things. It's one of those things where they all kind of suck. Like Discord totally didn't ban me already for running a server against pedophilia, which makes it extra funny that these people are calling me a groomer or whatever because like I've literally been only against that and been so many examples of me like directly opposing these people and literally getting banned from places for doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the point is that like Discord also sucks and it's controlled by the Chinese
Oh God,
government.
yeah.
Um, Like same with TikTok, same with so like they all suck. They all suck. Fuck social media. Talk to people. Meet people on social media and then go to meet space and have actual conversations and physical practice.
Conversations.
Yeah.
That I prefer that too. I really do. Like, I think that even though it's kind of risky, if you meet people, go offline with them too. You can be safe and protect your sec, and still like actually meet people and stuff. I know some people will disagree with that because it's dangerous or fitty or something, but like they want us to be afraid to go outside and meet each other. They want us afraid to be in the grass.
Yep.
So do that. Do what they're afraid of. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
Radical
Um,
fuckery.
um, well, I think we've been going for, oh goodness, almost 2 hours. I didn't even realize it had gone that fast.
Eh.
Well, after everything that we've said, I'll get, like, do you have anything else that you'd like to add? And, like, obviously, please plug your stuff and everything like that. Where can people find you? Where can they find your podcast? All that stuff.
So you can find me at Insanity is Free on Twitter. I'm Smealm on Discord. I guess the point there. You can find like more of my writings that I'm gonna start getting going on Anarch Unity, a site that like I started with another anarchist, panarchist, and in general, yeah, I'm available at all these places. I do YouTube called Jeremiah Talks, and there's going to be more content on another channel called Hate with Harding, where I've already gone against some pedophilia over there. So if y'all want to check out an interesting video deep diving into some like high profile figures who are weirdly okay with pedophilic bullshit, and going against those people, that's a great channel to go to. If you're an actual anti-groomer rather than this motherfucker who is just using it as a wedge issue, you will be very welcome in my circles, and also ask about my cult.
Everybody needs to ask about the cult. Well, I really appreciate you for coming on, and I think that people are going to be able to see you here more often as well because when we have great discussions and stuff, sometimes he pops in and like they let me go on their show all the time. It's super fun to have conversations over there. I've even stolen some of their like turn taking and keeping it a little organized skills that I saw them using before. I really like that. Um, I may lax up on it a little bit, but like I really appreciate you not like bitching at me for stealing your freaking tactics on the podcast.
I
It
want
has
that to be
added a
the way it
lot
happens.
more. I think it should be like that. A bunch of people will get like freaked out about it, but like I think we need to share with each other and make everybody stronger. Um, because if we're standing at uneven ground and stuff when it comes time to have the shield wall will be full of holes, and we
Also,
will get screwed.
Also, I haven't clicked this video, but I just think it's funny that from what it looks like, um, this Gopnik Central person is like, the one video on their fucking channel is Kid Rage uninstalls Mortal Online 2. So, I mean, sure, you can say we're the groomers and you can have content immediately geared toward kids with like this mature rated game. You can be a weird hypocrite in your own corner of the internet.
Gross.
Eh.
Yeah, well, a lot of people like that. They just don't have anything better to do, and like they don't have a really happy life. So
Eh.
hopefully one day, they can grow and they can heal, and everything will be better for them. And if not, it's not my problem. Like, um, it's really not. Like, I feel bad for people, but you can't help everybody. You can only help people who want to be helped, and you only have so much energy. You almost only have so much time. Um, and people are highly limited on that stuff. Unless you're wild ass hedgehog. Because, like, this mofo is going, like, Mach speeds all the time. I wish I could keep up with them and everything like that. And I hope that in the future we can do some updates and things like that. I'll try to keep everybody updated with your shows and stuff that's going on as well. And man, it's just really nice to have you in the movement, in the community, in the extended community, to be meeting, like the people that come with you too. Like
Yeah.
the people who come with you can be so really interesting. I love all of it. And I hope that we're together for a while. And, you know, Our next episode is probably going to be a random one, so keep your eyes out. We will we'll throw it on you at the last minute. You will just be
Yeah.
sitting there, and then bam, we'll be there, all smashed against the screen, being like, "Hey, what's up?" But anyways, we got to get out of here. I will see you guys soon. Y'all stay free and don't fall for those illusions of safety.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And hey, if anybody else wants like to have the same balls that this person does, feel free to also add me on because very few people do. Like I'm blacklisted in so many fucking joints because I've gone against their fucking sacred cattle.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Have a good night, y'all.
Be well. Smash the fucking.
Bros that kill Melvins, more Frankie, keep the suckers out. Cussin' OG, if you know about the kid in his mother proud. Talking about the trees and the roads that came from the wild. That kill Melvins, more Frankie, keep the suckers out. Cussin' OG, if you know about the kid in his mother proud. Talking about the trees and the roads that came from the wild. That kill Melvins, more Frankie, keep the suckers out. Cussin' OG, if you know about the kid in his mother proud. Talking about the trees and the roads that came from the wild.
I think we'd be still live.